Tammany Hall is one of my favorite games. I always tell people that the rules are simple, but the game is not. The game takes place during the mid-1800s in Lower Manhattan, where you're playing rival politicians fighting for control of the wards. Aside from fighting for control of the wards, you're also fighting for control of the different immigrant populations: Irish, English, German, and Italian.
I wonder if Miss Everdeen could angle her rifle in some other direction. I wonder, Mr. Vallon, if you understand the true value of this sort of publicity. The Archbishop himself, shoulder to shoulder with half the Irish in the 5 points. I'm offering my boy to form an alliance with you against Bill Cutting and his slate of nativist candidates. I'll negotiate a handsome fee for every Irish vote you send Tammany's way in the coming elections. I need a new friend in the 5-point son. I'd like that friend to be you.
Tamanend, or King Tammany, was the chief of chiefs and chief of the Turtle clan of the Lenape Nation in the Delaware Valley, signing the peace treaty with William Penn. Tamanend is best known as a lover of peace and friendship. Chief Tamanend was the principal Lenape leader who welcomed William Penn upon his arrival to this region in 1682. He became a popular figure in 18th century America, especially in Philadelphia. Also called a patron saint of America, Tamanend represented peace and amity. Tamanend partnered with Penn, Miquon, to bring about the bold accord in which Quaker settlers and local Native Americans would live together peacefully in Pennsylvania. The Treaty of Amity was reputedly agreed upon at the riverside location that is today Penn Treaty Park, about 2 miles north of the Tamanend statue. The extraordinary gathering occurred in the fall of 1682 under a giant elm tree, the Treaty Elm, at Shakamaxon. Back then, an interpreter read the deeds that Penn had prepared to the native leaders, who allegedly then made their marks. Penn paid for Indian land with various goods, which Tamanend divided among his people. But Chief Tamanend then gave Penn a belt made of wampum beads as a sign of friendship. Chief Tamanend announced during the treaty summit that the Lenape and the English colonists would live in peace as long as the waters run in the rivers and creeks and as long as the stars and moon endure. Chief Tamanend was also highly regarded for years by local Quakers and other white settlers and their descendants. He appears to have been a brave, wise, and virtuous sachem, and his own Lenape people esteemed his memory by bestowing his name on those that deserved those designations. The first Tammany Society was formed in Philadelphia in 1772, focusing on Chief Tamanend's American heritage, and holds an annual Tammany Festival. These organizations promoted local Tammany Day festivals, which replaced the May Day traditions of Europe. People danced in Native American style to music while holding a ribbon and moving in a circle around a pole. In the American colonies, he was noted for standing for the politics of peaceful diplomacy, and he consequently became an all-American folk hero identified and venerated throughout the fledgling nation for both his nobility and his native roots. Tamanend was regarded as the patron saint of America and later nicknamed King Tammany. Chief Tamanend had assumed as an icon for the peaceful politics of negotiation.
The name of Tamanend is held in the highest veneration among the Indians of all the chiefs and great men which the Lenape Nation ever had. He stands foremost on the list. And although many fabulous stories are circulating about him among the whites, the little of his real history is known. All we know therefore of Tamanend is that he was an ancient Delaware chief who never had an equal. Tamanend was top chief of the Lenape tribal divisions, the Wolf, Turkey, and Turtle clans. Upon William Penn's arrival in 1681, the chief established a warm mutual friendship with the Englishmen. Both learned the other's language. Together they idealized how Europeans and Indians could live in harmony. In that sense of mutual trust, the chief, who was 53, sold much of Bucks County to Penn in 1683. Penn also publicly rebuked the Iroquois Indians in New York, who demanded his tribe drive out settlers from Pennsylvania. It was a courageous stand. Lenape Nation once spanned the Hudson and Delaware River watersheds in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. There were periodic dust-ups between European immigrants and the Indians. A Tamanend, whose name translates as affable, worked to tamp down hostility long after Penn returned to England in 1683. In 1694, he addressed Philadelphia's governing council and had this to say: "We and Christians of this river have always had a free roadway to one another, and though sometimes a tree has fallen across the road, yet we have still removed it again and kept the path clean, and we design to continue the old friendship that has been between us and you." This friendship pact made him a saint in colonial eyes. Chief Tamanend loved trails along the Chamonix Creek and especially Red Hill, now known as Prospect Hill in Doylestown Township. From the crest, he enjoyed magnificent vistas to the east, north, and west. He died there well on his way to Philadelphia to attend a treaty negotiation. Younger Indians had tired of carrying him when he became ill, so they built a small hut on the hill and left him there. The chief thought he had been abandoned, a useless old man in his 90s. In despair, he set fire to his bed of leaves, threw himself on it, and expired. Settler Walter Shewell discovered the body and buried it in the presence of other Indians. A large slab of slate from the Chamonix Creek was used as a marker. A century later, another property owner dug up the stone and used it in the wall of a new barn. The grave, left unmarked, eventually was lost. After the chief's death, towns from New England to Georgia celebrated St. Tammany Day every May 1st to honor him. On May 1st, 1778, George Washington and the Continental Army, encamped at Valley Forge, held, quote, "a day in mirth and jollity in honor of King Tammany." Tammany society sprang up in major cities.
Tammany Hall was a political powerhouse in New York City from its 1789 inception to mayoral campaigns well into the 1950s. Its leadership was frequently aligned with the Democratic Party, and it was a major or controlling faction in the party from 1821 to 1872, and then again from 1905 to 1932, which included infamous Tammany bosses such as William Boss Tweed.
Hi, Mr. Tweed. You back an Irishman for sheriff of the city and county New York, and we'll get him elected.
I love the Irish, son. Higher than alderman, you shall never climb.
Well, why not?
For one thing, no man living can consolidate the Irish vote.
I can.
And for another, I mean no effrontery. No one's yet found an Irish candidate for sheriff worth voting for.
Is this it, priest? Pope's new army? A few crusty bitches and a handful of ragtags? My challenge! The ancient laws of combat, we have met at this chosen ground to settle for good and all who holds sway over the 5 points. Us natives, born rightwise to this fine land, or the foreign hordes defiling it.
The ancient laws of combat, I accept the challenge of the so-called natives. You plague our people at every turn. But from this day out, you shall plague us no more. For let it be known that the hand that tries to strike us from this land shall be swiftly cut down.
The Society of St. Tammany, or Columbian Order, was founded on May 12, 1789, a fortnight later than the establishment of the national government by William Mooney. Says Judah Hammond, an early member of Tammany, quote, "His object was to fill the country with institutions designed, and men determined, to preserve the just balance of power. His purpose was patriotic and purely republican. The Constitution provided by his care contained, among other things, a solemn asseveration which every member at his initiation was required to repeat and subscribe to, that he would sustain the state institutions and resist a consolidation of power in the general government," unquote. Before the Revolution, societies variously known as the Sons of Liberty and the Sons of St. Tammany had been formed to aid the cause of independence. Tammany, or Tamanend, was an Indian chief of whom fanciful legends have been woven, but of whose real life little can be told. Some maintain that he lived in the neighborhood of Scranton, Pennsylvania, when William Penn arrived, and that he was present at the great council under the elm tree. His name is said to have been on Penn's first treaty with the Indians, April 23rd,
1683. He is also described as a great chief of the Delaware nation, and his wigwam is said to have stood on the grounds now occupied by Princeton University. The fame of his wisdom, benevolence, and love of liberty spreading to the colonists, they adopted his name for their patriotic lodges. When societies sprang up bearing the names of St. George, St. Andrew, or St. David, and proclaiming their fealty to King George, the separatists dubbed Tammany a saint in ridicule of the imported saints. The Revolution over, the Sons of Liberty and the Sons of St. Tammany dissolved. The controversy over the adoption of the federal Constitution had the effect of reuniting the patriotic lodges. The rich and influential classes favored Hamilton's design of a republic having a president and a Senate chosen for life, and state governments elected by Congress. Opposed to this attempt toward a highly centralized government were the forces which afterward organized the Anti-Federalist Party.
Our elected representatives are a gang of thieves who swear to better our lot while dipping their hands deep into our pockets.
I stand shoulder to shoulder with community leaders like Bill Cutting against any and all inroads into our fine democracy.
I see to it that no one takes away what you have earned by plucking application.
To invading hordes of Hibernians.
You go to the polls and you put your mark next to the name Walter McGinn.
Against the potato eaters, like them over there, thieving our jobs.
Why should so many Irish die down south when the first war to win is not down in Dixie, but right here, in these streets?
In the heat of the Revolutionary War, and the times immediately following it, popular indignation struck at them in severe laws. In all places held by the Patriot Army, a Tory refusing to renounce his allegiance to King George ran considerable danger, not only of mob visit, but of confiscation of property, exile, imprisonment, or, in flagrant cases of adherence to the enemy, death.
A day's work done for all the good citizens coming in here to harass me about crime and the points. Some even go so far as to accuse Tammany of connivance in this so-called rampant criminality. What am I to do? I can't have this. Something has to be done.
What do you have in mind?
I don't know. I think maybe we should hang someone.
Who?
No one important necessarily. Average men will do. Back alley amusers with no affiliations.
How many?
3 or 4.
Which?
4.
You stand here convicted veeringly of lewdness, jack-rolling, sneak thievery, chlorhydrating, sodomy, strangulation, and enthusiastic corruption of the public good. I never struck a foul blow nor turned a card. May God greet me as a friend.
Wrote one who lived in those days, quote, "The inequality was greatly added to by the social and business customs of the times. There was an aristocracy and a democracy whose limits were as clearly marked by manner and dress as by legal enactment. The aristocracy controlled capital in trade, monopolized banks and banking privileges, which they did not hesitate to employ as a means of perpetuating their power." Unquote. Dr. John W. Francis tells, in his reminiscences of the prevalence in New York for years after the Revolution of a supercilious class that missed no opportunity of sneering at the demand for political equality. Permeated with democratic doctrines, the populace detested the landed class. The founding of the Society of the Cincinnati was an additional irritant, formed by the officers of the Continental Army before disbandment. This society adopted one clause especially obnoxious to the radicals. It provided that the eldest male descendant of an original member should be entitled to wear the insignia of the order and enjoy the privileges of the society which, it was argued, would be best perpetuated in that way. Jefferson saw a danger to the liberties of the people in this provision, since it would tend to give rise to a race of hereditary nobles. Well, what do you think we have today with the Rockefellers, etc.? Continuing, founded on the military, arid breeding in turn other subordinate orders. At Washington's suggestion, the clause was modified, but an ugly feeling rankled in the public mind due to the existence of an active party supposedly bent on the establishment of a disguised form of monarchy. It was at such a juncture of movements and tendencies that the Society of St. Tammany, or Columbian Order, was formed. The new organization constituted a formal protest against aristocratic influences and stood for the widest democratization in political life. As a contrast to the old world distinctions of the Cincinnati and other societies, the Tammany Society adopted aboriginal forms and usages. The officers held Indian titles, the head or president chosen from 13 sachems, corresponding to trustees, elected annually, was styled Grand Sachem. In its early years, the society had a custom, now obsolete, of conferring the honorary office of Kitchi Okima, or Great Grand Sachem, upon the President of the United States. Washington, John Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, John Quincy Adams, and Jackson were hailed successively as the Great Grand Sachems of Tammany. After the sachems came the sagamore, or master of ceremonies, a scribe or secretary, and a Wiskinski, or doorkeeper. This all sounds very Masonic. Instead of using the ordinary calendar designations, the society divided the year into seasons, and these into moons. Its notices bore reckoning from the year Columbus discovered America, that of the Declaration of American Independence, and of its own organization. Instead of inscribing New York, July 1800, there would appear Manhattan, season of fruits, 7th moon, year of discovery 308th, of independence 24th, and of the institution the 12th. In early times, the society was divided into tribes, one for each of the 13 original states. There were the eagle, otter, panther, beaver, bear, tortoise, rattlesnake, tiger, fox, deer, buffalo, raccoon, and wolf tribes, which stood respectively for New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. A new member of the Tammany Society had the choice of saying to which of these tribes he cared to be attached. Frequently, the members dressed in Indian garb and carried papooses in their public parades. They introduced the distinction between long talks and short talks in their public addresses. The name wigwam was given to their meeting place, and Barden's Tavern was selected as their first home. At the initiation of the Grand Sachem, a song beginning, "Brothers, our council fire shines bright," was sung, and at the initiation of a member, another song was sung, beginning, "Sacred's the ground where freedom's found, and virtue stamps her name." The society contemplated founding a chain of Tammany societies over the country, and accordingly designated itself as Tammany Society No. 1.
The initiation was perhaps the strangest and most elaborate of any fraternal organization, involving a role-playing scenario where the initiate is accused of treachery and is distrusted because of his pale face.
It sounds as follows.
Too often have we been deceived by those who professed friendship, but who repaid our hospitality with ingratitude and treachery. What they have been, I fear he is, a spy. Therefore, prepare your keenest scalping knives and your weightiest war clubs. Our brave junior sagamore will superintend the execution. Braves, light the fires!
The society showed its Indian ceremonies to advantage and gained much prestige by aiding in the conciliation of the Creek Indians. After useless attempts to make a treaty with them, the government undertook, as a last resort, in February 1790, to influence Alexander McGillivray, their half-breed chief, to visit New York, where he might be induced to sign a treaty. To Colonel Marinus Willett, a brave soldier of the Revolution and later mayor of New York City, the mission was entrusted. In July 1790, Willett started north, accompanied by McGillivray and 28 Creek chiefs and warriors. Upon their arrival in New York, then the seat of the national government, the members of the Tammany Society, in full Indian costume, welcomed them. One phase of the tale has it that the Creeks set up a wild whoop, at whose terrifying sound the Tammany make-believe red faces fled in dismay.
Alright guys, so here's how it's gonna work. The Braves will light the cones, and at a signal from the Junior, the Warriors and Braves, as led by the Junior, will perform a scalp dance around the paleface. While it is expected that the dance will be given in a realistic manner, any loud yelling, uncouth noise, or, in fact, just anything that may be heard outside the council chamber, that's absolutely prohibited, okay?
On August 2nd, the Creeks were entertained at a Tammany banquet. The treaty was signed on August 13th. In the late 18th century, the Tammany societies, named after Tamanend, were formed. The most well-known of these was New York City's Society of St. Tammany, which grew into a major political machine known as Tammany Hall. For the next 35 years, the original Sons of Liberty and the Sons of St. Tammany groups went their own way under many different names. The Red Men evolved out of the early secret societies of the American Revolution. The improved order of Red Men integrated Native American lore and garb into their meetings and ceremonies, dressing in traditional Iroquois clothing and even simulating tribal initiation rites for incoming members. In 1834, the improved order of Red Men Iron was started as a revival in Baltimore. It was focused on temperance, patriotism, and American history. The initiation was perhaps the strangest and most elaborate of any fraternal organization. involving a role-playing scenario where the initiate is accused of treachery and is distrusted because of his pale face. It sounds as follows. Too often have we been deceived by those who professed friendship, but who repaid our hospitality with ingratitude and treachery. What they have been, I fear he is, a spy. Therefore, prepare your keenest scalping knives and your weightiest war clubs. Our brave junior Sagamore will superintend the execution. Brains, light the fire! There are many theories about how Odd Fellowship first started and received its name. The most widely accepted belief is that it emerged in England from a group of working-class men who fell outside the established system of trade guilds. These men banded together to form their own labor union. Fellows from numerous odd trades gathered together to form a fraternity so to protect and care for their members and communities. Historically, there was no welfare state, trade unions, or national health insurance. These men would work together to help each other and the unfortunate families in their community get back on their feet by aiding each other in times of sickness and distress, whether it was rebuilding a barn that had burned or putting in a new crop after a devastating season. Such men became known as Odd Fellows, so named by the general population who also thought they were an odd bunch of fellows who would behave in such a seemingly impractical, altruistic, and selfless fashion. The group then adopted the name. By the 1700s, there were numerous Odd Fellow organizations in the UK. In 1810, a number of lodges in the Manchester area created the Independent Order of Odd Fellows with the title Manchester Unity. With their improved system, they were able to persuade other Odd Fellow organizations to join their unity. They also chartered the Independent Order of Odd Fellows in America, founded on April 26, 1819, by Thomas Wildey and 4 other members of the fraternity from England. The American Order then established many branches around the world. Its leadership was frequently aligned with the Democratic Party, and it was a major or controlling faction in the party from 1821 to 1872, and then again from 1905 to 1930. Tammany Hall is one of my favorite games. I always tell people that the rules are simple, but the game is not. The game takes place during the mid-1800s in Lower Manhattan, where you're playing rival politicians fighting for control of the wards. Aside from fighting for control of the wards, you're also fighting for control of the different immigrant populations, Irish, English, German, and Italian. So during your turn, you only have 2 options. You can place 2 ward bosses in any ward, and that can be 2 in 1, or you can spread them out 1 in 2 different wards. Or you can place 1 ward boss in a ward and 1 immigrant cube in any ward, and you also gain a political favoriteship of that same color. And everybody goes around and does one of those 2 actions every turn until the end of year 4, where an election takes place. Elections take place after the end of every 4th turn. Elections work as follows. Each ward boss automatically counts as 1 vote, so in this first ward that we're looking at, yellow already has 2 votes and red has 1 vote to win the ward. Players then secretly use political favoriteships to gain additional votes. But you can only use political favoriteships of immigrant cubes that are in that ward. So in this first ward, yellow and red can only use green and orange political favoriteships. Each political favoriteship counts as 1 additional vote, so after each player reveals, whoever has the most combined votes wins the ward. If yellow won this election, they would leave 1 yellow ward boss remaining and all the others would be removed. Then you continue that process for each individual ward where there's a battle. Any uncontested wards automatically go to whoever's there. At the end of each election, whoever has control of the most wards becomes the mayor and wins an additional 3 victory points. The mayor must also then appoint these 4 other different positions among the remaining players, which will give them an additional ability for the next 4 years. Until the next election happens, where they repeat the process again. Other than getting 3 additional victory points for becoming mayor, which you win by having the most victory points at the end of the game, being mayor kind of sucks. 'Cause for the next 4 turns, you're going to be the first player to go. Which means, at the end of the 4th turn, everyone else after you still has their turn to go. And if they do anything to kind of screw you over, you have no opportunity to retaliate or do anything about it. And that's where the real fun of the game comes in. It's a political game, so you can kind of make shady backdoor deals as long as they don't involve actual transactions. You can't give a political chip to somebody else, but you can say, I'll do this if you do this, and follow through with that or not. It's up to you. But that's where the real fun comes in.